They can monitor water. They hadn't done that yet. He has several questions. That's correct. That's correct.
I talked to her an hour ago.
That's why we wanted.
Yeah, no, that's why we're here. Yeah. Hello, good afternoon. How are y'all doing? No. You answer only yourself in this position.
I was,
I guess I should sit there for this.
I got behind the council meeting, she was driving real slow.
That's just not even what happened. It's really not.
Are y'all?
Like Chavez down.
I'm okay, thank you. How are you?
Who is this on? Who is Zooming?
The water. Oh, no.
Hello, Tabitha, how are you?
I'm still not
Great.
First.
This deal is worth
And you?
$100 million to get my trip.
I'm tired of these guys.
Me too.
Thank you, ma'am.
This meeting of the Infrastructure Committee is called to order. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our July 24th meeting.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Councilman Nicholson, a second by Councilman Butcher. All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. We have one item on this agenda for today. It is consideration of granting an access point to Pine Wave Energy Partners to withdraw water from Cross Lake to use in their operations. Who from the administration is prepared to speak on this?
Madam Chair, I'm gonna ask William Daniel, Director of Water Sewer, to come up and start us off. This is some information that I felt was important that we bring before infrastructure to try to come to some decision point as to how much we're willing to allow. We do know that the state has already granted permission to the sale of the water from Cross Lake. So with that being said, I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehorn. Good afternoon, Mr. Daniel.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman. What he said, that's correct.
We would like for you to elaborate if you can, though.
So we received a request, or there was apparently a request that had been made prior to me coming here to take a certain amount of water out of Cross Lake. didn't know a whole lot about the request, except for the fact that they had come to the city several years ago, and the city turned them down. And then there was a then there was a question as to who actually had the right to sell the water. And the Attorney General says that the water belongs to DNR. So Pine Wave went and executed a contract with DNR, and so now they have the right to purchase a specific amount of water from Cross Lake at a fixed price. What they would like to do at this point is have access from the city parish, old job, have access from the city to put a intake into Cross Lake where they could access the water. We had a meeting with them yesterday, and we talked about this among other things. They're actually drilling some wells in the city of Shreveport as well, but I think that's not a topic for today. But they would take the water. They're building a storage facility. They would take it, and we could restrict when they took it out, and they would pay us for that as well. I asked them if they had done any studies to determine the impact of how much water they would like to take out. They said they might have done a study, but it was not a complete study, so we're still looking for some information as to what the impact would be from taking out the water. Now, in terms of the water that they would like to take out, it's not a tremendous amount of water. I mean, it really wouldn't, in my opinion, affect the water quality of the lake. But once you let one company start taking out water, then other companies will then obviously be knocking at your door to take water out as well. So whatever we do, we need to consider the long-term aspects of this withdrawal of water from Cross Lake. So I think Patrick with engineering has more specific information about the water quality in Cross Lake. So I'd like for Patrick to come up and talk about that. And then I'm always happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. Hello, Mr. Furlong.
Hello, how are you? Okay.
Above the dirt, right?
Yep, yes, ma'am. We had some discussions yesterday about water quality, and the main concern that was expressed about the water quality of Cross Lake is when it gets at a lower level, a lower stage. It's not an extremely deep lake, so when it gets to a low stage in the hot weather, the water quality is a concern. But through our discussions, Pine Wave was willing to only take water when the city was agreeable to it. So if there were ever times of concerns of the stage of the lake, they said they'd be agreeable not to take water at that time. So I think that concern could be mitigated.
Are there not certain policies in place, either locally or statewide, to about water level, or about whatever thresholds would need to exist, just in general?
Not that I know of. It's the level of the lake. It's managed by the Amos treatment plant. They watch the level of the lake. We have the 12 Mile Bayou pump station that brings water from 12 Mile Bayou into Cross Lake when it's needed. And it's managed that way. But,
Councilman Nicholson.
Excuse me.
Excuse me, Mr. Whitehorn.
Go ahead, Mr. Whitehorn.
Madam Chair, we also have Mr. David Cromwell, Attorney Cromwell, that's with us to answer any questions as well, and he may have some comments he'd like to make.
Is he our counsel, Mr. Whitehorn?
He is counsel for the city. That's
Okay.
correct.
Hi, Mr. Cromwell.
Good afternoon.
I don't know if do we have questions for him at this
Well,
point?
Mr. Cromwell, I appreciate your being here. I might prefer to have an offline conversation with you that is not part of the public record about this issue. And so
Certainly.
that's my preference and suggestion to you all, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholson. Any other of my colleagues on this committee?
I do.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Taylor.
In the cooperative endeavor agreement, there is a section there that talks about the economic impact regarding this, but I also want to know what is the environmental impact of them doing this, short-term, long-term, or has anybody looked at that?
The city has not done a study, and Pine Wave has not done a complete study either. But we have discussed it and thought about it, and one of the environmental impacts is what I just talked about, the water quality of the lake, which, could be mitigated. Another concern with any operation near the lake would be the pump station, having a mechanical station near the lake, and there could be spills, there could be stuff of that nature. Anything that was built like that, we would make sure that it was safe to be around the lake.
Where is it that they propose to receive the water?
I don't know that.
So we asked them yesterday where that was. The initial access point that they had specified was for a previous project, which they had moved on for. They said they had numerous access points that they could take the water from. They just wanted the cooperation of the city of Shreveport before they started doing any of that.
So who gets the money, the city or the state?
Well, they would pay the city money as well as the state.
Do we have any other recourse if we decide that we don't want to do this or not?
Well, I think that we can always say no, and we've said no in the past.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, and we don't know the answer to this, is would they be able to get the water without the city of Shreveport's permission?
Is that something that Attorney Cromwell can tell us?
Well, I will interject that, this deal is worth hundreds of millions of dollars to the state, and so Mr. Cromwell certainly probably could advise us about that. I don't want to have any conversations on the record that might prejudice our ability to deal this appropriately, and so
Okay.
that's why I suggest.
I think that number is, I don't think it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Well, if I may, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Mr. Daniel, I appreciate your remarks, and Mr. Warnhorn, thank you for calling this to the council's attention. As is the case with many of the myriad issues that come before the council, I have to, and other members of the council have to learn on the fly. But this is generally what I understand about this deal, based on my review of the cooperative endeavor agreement that the state and Pine Wave Energy signed. Pine Wave Energy has secured from the state the right to withdraw as many as 375 million gallons of water from Cross Lake over a 2-year period. The cooperative endeavor agreement further allows Pine Wave Energy to extend the agreement for 3 subsequent 2-year terms, so that the agreement extends at its option to 2028. The state statutory maximum for water sales is 15 cents a barrel, and so 375 million barrels times 15 cents. Is that correct, Wes?
No, I don't.
Somebody tell me, what are they paying the state?
1.5% per barrel.
I think one issue is the difference between barrels and gallons.
Okay.
And I'm not sure. I believe, is it 15 cents per 1,000 gallons? I think that's what the cooperative endeavor agreement calls for. So we had looked at this at one time, and I think for the 375 million, I think we were looking at the state was going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000 or $60,000 for that 3-year period. I believe that's correct.
I've talked to 2 lawyers in the past 2 hours to do this kind of work, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that's not consistent with my understanding of what the state's going to get paid on this deal, and I would want us to know that for certain.
Absolutely.
Before we decide to move forward on this,
Right.
or not to do so. But I'll step back from the conversation about price and say that it is very concerning to me as a member of the city council that, having been told no by the city of Shreveport when it asked years ago for access to Cross Lake to withdraw water, Pine Wave Energy approached the Department of Natural Resources and cut a deal with the state without any consultation with Mayor Perkins' administration or with the city council. That, in my view, is a very significant failure of intergovernmental relationships. Cross Lake is a critically important resource that belongs to all of us. It is the source of our drinking water, and it is a recreational resource enjoyed by thousands and perhaps tens of thousands of people every year in the city of Shreveport. I cannot imagine the city cooperating with giving Pine Wave Energy access to Cross Lake for the purpose of withdrawing what ultimately could be more than 1 billion gallons of water from the lake without a comprehensive environmental study to determine the hydrological and other environmental impacts on the lake. Water level is only one factor, right? The rapid removal of large quantities of water can impact the lake, potentially in adverse ways. And I'm not an engineer or a scientist, but I do expect before I am asked as an elected member of this council to approve such a deal, that we will have a robust, comprehensive analysis of the potential environmental impacts of this deal on Cross Lake.
And I did
Mr.
want to
Daniel,
respond. May I respond, Madam
Oh,
Chairman?
sure. I was going to ask if either you or Mr. Weiss had anything to add to this.
Well, I just want to say that we brought this to the council because the administration had received the information, and the administration, the mayor, and the chief wanted to make sure that the council was aware of what was going on. So he asked me to schedule the infrastructure meeting. I can tell you for certain that the city of Shreveport should not and probably will not allow one drop of water to come out of there without that kind of study, so that we would know exactly what the effect would be for taking water out of the lake and when the most advantageous time to take water out would be. So this is purely just an informational and a get up to speed type of meeting. This is not for action. We're not asking you to approve anything. We just want to, the administration just wants to be transparent and to let you know as a council, because one thing that I know that council members and elected officials, any elected official hates to have a question asked to them about something and them not have any information on what's going on. So we just want to be transparent. We want to let everybody know what's going on with the situation. It's, obviously we're in the very, very early stages of this. We need studies. We absolutely need a study on it so that we can understand it. And I know the administration is not going to want to move forward without that study.
Well, and I should say, I think the administration has done just the right thing by scheduling this meeting. It's called this issue to the council's attention, and my remarks are not intended to suggest otherwise. I will reiterate that it's very surprising to me that DNR struck this deal with Pine Wave Energy without consulting the city of Shreveport.
From my understanding, Councilman, that is a fairly standard agreement with DNR. They do it all the time. Wes can elaborate a little bit on the lawsuit or the legal matters. So I'm going to let Wes talk about the legal matter real quick about it.
I don't want to have an on-the-record conversation about our position, and we may take a different position than the Attorney General regarding who owns this water and who can sell it. Attorney General opinions are not the final word concerning legal issues.
You are correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
So are we saying that we don't want to hear any insight that Mr. Weiss might be able to bring to this right now?
I'm suggesting, and I mean, Mr. Letier is sitting around the horseshoe as well. I don't want to have a conversation about legal issues on the record. I'd rather have a conversation off the record about that.
I agree with that, Councilman.
Thank you.
Councilman,
Yes, sir.
if I could say this, something that is not privileged, and that is the city did send an objection signed by the city attorney, Lakeisha Creel, to the Department of Natural Resources, setting forth in detail the reasons for its objection to the grant of the cooperative endeavor agreement by the state. It's my understanding that we heard no response whatever, and then found out after the fact by Pine Wave that the CEA had been granted by DNR.
Well, that is helpful information, Mr. Cuomo. I'd like a copy of the objection we submitted to DNR to this deal. And I will make the comment that while the form of the agreement may be standard, I suspect that it is not standard for DNR to grant access to the drinking supply for one of the state's largest cities for this purpose. And so I do think this bears careful consideration by this council and by the administration. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, I think that we've covered our concerns. If there's no other questions, we only have one other topic at hand on the agenda, and that's just future topics or the infrastructure projects update. Mr. Furlong, you prepared to talk about we'll get to public comments in a minute.
I just wanted to provide a brief update on some projects. The water and sewer projects have been in the forefront with the city, but we also have drainage and street projects going. So I just want to mention a few, and if y'all have any questions, I can either answer them or take notes. But as far as drainage work goes, there was a FEMA grant that we received years ago to purchase and demolish flood-prone properties, and those projects are almost complete. So if you see or hear about any homes getting purchased by the city and demolished, that's what the project is. Another drainage-related project or water-related project is, you might have noticed at the Red River along Clyde Fant, right near Veterans Park and the Frisbee Golf Course, there's a major spot of erosion. It's washed out the multi-use trail, and it's very severe. We do not have funding to repair that. We are trying to acquire funding, trying to work with the Army Corps of Engineers to see if they can make the repair and fund it. It's a substantial project, probably in the neighborhood of $4 to $6 million to repair this, but it's extremely critical to our recreational trail and to the parkway. If it keeps going, it will get close to the parkway. I wanted to highlight that and let you know the situation with that. As far as some street projects go, there's a concrete panel replacement project that's going on right now on Jewella Avenue from Greenwood Road to Milam. We are working on a project to replace and repair some of the lighting on the Cross Lake Bridge. You probably remember funding Linwood Avenue Phase 3 and Phase 4, the reconstruction of Linwood to go all the way to 70th. We're working on Phase 2 right now, but we're working with the state and NOCOG on those projects. So projects like that, it's hard for me to give you a timeline of when we'll start, because we have to get through all the state and federal process. Let's see, Linwood Bridge was discussed quite a bit during the bond proposal to replace that bridge. We don't have a budget that can replace the bridge, but we do have a budget that can make some repairs. So we're proceeding with making some smaller repairs that are extremely critical and needed. Knight Street is a project that this council modified the budget, and we've been working with the geotechnical engineer to do some investigation, and now the design engineer is working on revising those plans. Once those plans are complete, we will evaluate any right-of-way needs and utility conflicts. Most of the utility conflicts and right-of-way were addressed previously, but with a new set of plans, we need to check it again, make sure everything's in order before we proceed with construction. That's really all I have. Are there any questions? If not,
Councilman Nicholson?
Mr. Furlong, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask a brief question about the status of Knight Street. We both received email traffic about that recently.
okay. Knight Street, maybe I mumbled in this mess, sorry. But the design engineer is working on the plans now. I believe he has 90 days to finish the plans. Once they're complete, we'll look at utility conflicts or right-of-way needs. And that's always a variable with the time frame, acquiring right-of-way and having others relocate their utilities. So it's hard for me to give a start date.
Do you have a ballpark timeline? I mean, I understand it's rough and I won't hold you to it necessarily. How long is this going to take? Is it years more? Is it a year more?
I would say 6 months.
Okay.
You know, once we get the plans complete, that would give us several months to. That's if the utility relocation and the right-of-way acquisition is minor. Once the plans are complete and we know what the situation is, I think I'll be able to give you a better estimate at that time.
Okay.
But-
When you're in a position to give a better estimate, will you share it with me, please?
I will.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Councilman Taylor first.
Okay.
Mr. Furlong, can you give me a list of those properties that you will demolish in District 8, please, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I'll do that.
I saw her go for that mask first, so I knew. Councilman Butcher.
Patrick, we've had some email correspondence about the North Ferry and Southern Loop. So once this cooperative endeavor signed or passed today between the parish and the city, we should see some progress, correct?
Yes, sir. Once the agreement's signed and the funding's transferred to the city, the plans are complete, we'll advertise the job for bids and it'll go.
What kind of time frame are we looking at?
The CEA, the authorization is a 2-reader, so we're looking at, I guess, mid-October. Probably have all that worked out with the parish by the end of October.
Okay.
I'm guessing. Advertise for bids in November, get a contract together in December. So we're looking at a notice to proceed in early 2021.
Okay.
We'll get the notice to proceed issued, but these signal projects typically, we get the contract executed, give them a notice to proceed, then they have to order the equipment, which there's some lead time on. So there's going to be some downtime after we give them the go-ahead, but it's progressing.
So it's safe to say at least by the second quarter of 2021.
I think so.
Okay. And I have a question, and this is not really an infrastructure question.
You only get one question per, I'm sorry, just kidding.
This is so we have an annexation on our agenda for first reading.
Mm-hmm.
The person that signed that annexation agreement is deceased now. Where do we go with that? Have you looked into that at all?
I have not. I did not know that.
Yeah, he passed away 2 months ago, or about a month ago, actually.
Okay, so he's the one that signed the petition
Yeah.
to request.
Yeah,
I'll look into that.
because I didn't know if we needed to postpone that or what, but it's an LLC. He signed for the LLC.
Okay.
I just noticed, I wasn't aware it was going to be on the agenda until I looked at the agenda yesterday, and then I saw that he had signed. I thought it was on hold due to his death, so.
Okay, we'll look into that.
Okay, thank you.
And I thought of one other thing I'd like to mention about the homes that were purchased and demolished. They had to meet certain qualifications. They had to be repetitive loss homes. So it was all based on the claims on their national flood insurance policy. That's all I have. Thank you.
That one at the corner of Southfield and Fontaine?
Glen Cove. I think there's another one.
Yeah,
Fontaine.
I noticed it was gone. I noticed it had been noticed, but it's gone now.
Yep.
I'm just gonna give you all my headaches offline on email, okay?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. That includes all our agenda items except for public comment. At this point, if you would like to make a public comment, we don't do slips for these meetings, so just approach the podium and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comments.
Good afternoon. John Settle, 4 Tealwood. I concur entirely with the comments made by Councilman Nicholson, questions and concerns about this agreement with the state for water. Believe it or not, I have a biology degree undergraduate, so I have a little bit of knowledge. I have several concerns. One is the contract, and I reviewed it briefly. I think it says that the money goes to the state, but again, I looked at it quickly and I have this. 2, I didn't see anything requirement for bonding in the contract in case the water is damaged. It does have provision where they're liable, but it's an LLC. 3, I agree with, of course, Councilman Nicholson, AG opinion is not binding. 4, I'm concerned about the precedent that this sets. And I have a lot of concerns, which I think y'all have pretty well at least identified, and I am requesting also a copy of the objection. Only thing I have is from Mr. Daniel, and it was helpful, but I found that it's probably needs a lot more information, and I appreciate y'all's concern on this. Thank you.
Thank Mr. Settle?
Hi, I'm Frances Kelly. I live at 935 Linden Street. For me, hearing that the city had put in an objection and that there was not even a response from the Department of Natural Resources is very troubling. I've been looking into this issue for the past several months, and one of the things that I have learned is that Louisiana is the only state where local governments do not share in decision-making authority with the state concerning oil and gas drilling in sensitive areas that affect their city or municipality. And that's very troubling to me because the process at the Department of Natural Resources is very difficult for citizens to participate in. If you look at any other industry that pollutes or that has the potential to pollute, they're permitted through the Department of Environmental Quality, where there is a public participation process, there is a public comment period, there are public hearings if requested. When I called DNR to ask about the public participation process for fracking under Cross Lake, which is what this is about, they told me that their permit approval process is that the company applies for a permit and they approve it. And there's not even a way for citizens to find out that a permit is being applied for until after it's already done. And looking at how the Department of Natural Resources has failed to ensure that taxpayers are not left on the hook for the financial costs of cleanup historically and continuing to this day, I'm very concerned about this city being left with a financial burden if something goes wrong. And these companies are going bankrupt at an unprecedented rate. Chesapeake Energy went bankrupt in June, and they're not the only ones. They left behind $1.4 billion of cleanup costs that taxpayers are gonna have to cover. In this state, we have thousands and thousands of orphan wells, and the state does not require oil and gas companies to put up enough in bond to cover the cost of shutting down those wells, closing those wells, cleaning them up if something goes wrong. And the number of orphan wells is actually increasing, even with the knowledge that this is a problem, and Department of Natural Resources over that. So I'm just very concerned about all of the things that could go wrong. If there is a spill, the fracking chemicals that are in there, they're not required to disclose them by law. We don't even know what they are. The ones that we do know what they are, we know that there's significant health risk associated with them. But for the city to be able to clean up water that has been contaminated would be financially and technologically basically impossible. You can't test for chemicals if you don't know what they are. I mean, you can, but it's very, very expensive and time consuming and not practical. And and our city doesn't have the ability to do that. We test for the common chemicals that are required by the Clean Water Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act. So there's just so many things that are problematic in this, but this might be the only chance the city has to intervene in this decision about putting the drinking water of 200,000 people at risk, just because of the way that I know I'm running out of time, the way the process is set up. So thank you.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Does anyone else have a public comment?
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Mario Chavez, 9021 Blonde Boulevard, Shreveport, Louisiana, 71118. I can't say it any more eloquently than Councilman Nicholson said it, nor Mr. Settle. So just as a citizen of Shreveport, I wanted to send a resounding no that I drink this water. I live here. One of our last amazing resources is the lake, Cross Lake. We are the sportsman's paradise. For us to sell any water out of that, I think is doing a disservice to any citizen that lives in Shreveport. Any citizen that would like to live on the lake, recreate on the lake, fish in the lake, drink out of the faucet from their home. They stated a lot of things about safety and that they would do testing, that they would verify amounts. I'm a resounding no. However, if this goes through, I know how government works. Sometimes the citizens can be screaming from the rooftop no, and government still moves forward. But what procedures and protocols will be placed to guarantee and verify amounts withdrawn? How are we going to identify what is actually taken out of the pipe? Are we going to have according readings that are delivered via some type of mechanism to the citizens of Shreveport. I highly doubt that. It's going to be a leave it and forget it scenario. So rather than go down that rabbit hole of us risking our safety and security of our water, I would rather us just say no now. It's easy to say no. It's been done in the past. Prior councils have done it. I have a lot of faith in this horseshoe currently from everything I've heard. So thank you for standing up. And the counterparts that are not here, I ask that if they're watching online, that we send a resounding unanimous no, that this is the city of Shreveport, and we stand by our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Would anyone else like to make public comment? Mr. Perkins.
John Perkins, 310 Gentilly Circle, Shreveport, Louisiana. First off, Councilwoman Taylor, great questions about the lake, and one would be the noise pollution that comes from being close to a pump. How big is that pump? How much noise is it going to put out? That's not a lot of water compared to what Cross Lake once had in the billions. It's not a lot of money, so it's kind of not worth it. But it is worth studying, and I would encourage you guys, going back to when I was working in I think it was the early 90s when I first started working freelance. My career took me onto these fracking wells and into pump houses, and they're loud. So if we're drilling in the city, how loud is that? And how worth it to the city is it? But this is when we first found out that the lake was filling up with natural silt around 1990. We determined too expensive to dredge, so it's very shallow now, and went in another direction to refill it from the river. But there were calls out at the time to study this. You know, this was coming. We knew this was coming this day. And so it's here now. Maybe it's time to say no thank you for now and actually conduct a study. Get a declaratory judgment. Is it the city or the state that owns it? All of those sorts of things were called for with your predecessors. Let's do it. Let's study this and figure out what we're going to do going forward as water becomes more and more valuable. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you. The last item is public comments, but if any of my colleagues have anything else they'd like to say today? If not, then this meeting is adjourned. We can go get snacks before our next meeting. By snacks, I mean caffeine.
Grayson Butcher, can I visit with you for 1 second?
Huh? Oh yeah. That's fine.
Just 1 second.